So, who am I? I'm Chris Vernon. Hi. Um, I'm 63, and I've been married to Susan for 37 years. Been part of Harvest, as Pastor Rhonda said, for 34 years. Since 1991, we started here. So we have been on a journey together. This journey that I'm showing you, we've been on most of it together. I've been in the information technology business for all my life, almost 40 years, be 40 years in July. And I was on the road as an IT consultant for 30 of those years. And I flew about 2,300 flights in 18 years, and I think I've flown probably about 3,000 total. So I spent time on the road. So let's talk about the circle of life here. Almost everything we do affects our finances. Almost everything. If you got up this morning and you took a shower, you indirectly affected your finances one way or another. You had to pay to heat the water. You had to pay for the water. You had to pay for the soap. Hopefully you use soap. But so pretty much everything we do affects our finances, and we don't realize it. It's subtle, but it does. And then our finances affect almost everything we do. So if you're showering too much and you get convicted by that and say, oh my gosh, I'm spending too much on my showers, then you'll start showering less. So your finances have affected your behavior. So our behavior and our choices are affecting our finances, and our finances are affecting how we live and the decisions we make. So let's talk about how we get to this point. So I was born beautiful. God created me that way. Just as he created all of us that way. Ephesians 2:10 NIV says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." So this boy in this picture is the same person that is standing in front of you right now. He didn't know his potential. He didn't know the journey he'd take to realize his potential, but God did. And God patiently waited and waited and waited. And waited. So my parents did everything in their power to set me up for success. My dad, he was Depression era, World War II veteran. He was a Greyhound bus driver, and he was always an entrepreneur. When I was 10, he bought a farm in Cartersville, Georgia. It was a 58-acre farm. And he's a Greyhound bus driver, so he was gone almost 6 days a week. And I'm 10 or 12, and I now have a 58-acre farm to run. So I got to learn a lot of responsibility real quick. And my parents were real good about letting me learn responsibility. So I'm saying all this to tell you that I was equipped well to make proper decisions. Some people, they don't grow up in an environment that equips them that well. And so it's a lot more challenging for them to be able to find the right path to get to success. But for me, it was there. But that doesn't necessarily mean you get a free pass. So potential. This is from an earlier Harvest teaching we had. Potential is unexposed ability, reserve power, untapped strength, capped capabilities, unused success, dormant gifts, hidden talents, latent power. Potential is the sum of who you are that you have yet to reveal. And so the young man in this picture here, he's just got all this energy and he's got all this untapped potential and he's ready to go. And so what do? So when I was 16, I had a chance for an appointment to the Air Force Academy, and I passed all the academic tests, but I failed my vision test. I didn't have 20/20 vision, so I couldn't fly. So what I ended up doing, I went to a military college. It was actually called North Georgia College. It's in Dahlonega in Georgia. I went there. I was 16, and I was in a world of 18-year-olds. And, you know, when you're 63 and somebody's 65, that's not a big difference. But when you're 16 and everybody around you is 18, you are living in a different world. And that didn't have the best impact on my life. I started just kind of sloughing off. I started playing guitar all the time. I started just doing anything I could to procrastinate. And I really wasn't happy. And so I was there for about 2 years. And then after 2 years of college, I decided what I needed to do in life. I was going to be a cowboy. This is not a joke. This was my desire. I wanted to be a cowboy. I had a horse. I loved to rope. I was actually a roper in college and did rodeo stuff. And my mother, who prayed for me constantly and was just always so wise and everything, when I told her, I said, you know what, I'm not going to go to college anymore. I'm going to be a cowboy. And she said, well, if you want to be a cowboy, that's fine with me. But all I ask is that you finish college first. And I thought, man, that was such wisdom, right? Because if she had told me not to be a cowboy, I would have been loading my horse up really quick and been out of there. But now that I'm 63 and it hurts when I watch TV and I'm sitting on the couch, I'm thinking, man, I'm glad I'm not a cowboy because that'd be pretty rough right now. So she taught me into going back to school, and I went to the University of Georgia in 1980. Which was first year they won national championship with Herschel Walker there. And I made a deal with a lady that had a farm there. And so I would take care of her cattle and all of her stuff around the farm, and she gave me a place to park my trailer. And so I'm going to the University of Georgia. I took out student loans. I was doing everything possible. I was working. I was playing music. I was doing pretty much everything except studying when I should. And so I was really busy, and I stayed broke all the time. I just worked and blew my money on everything that I possibly could. And I was pre-med. So this cowboy, he's going to be a doctor, right? That makes a lot of sense that you're going to be a doctor. But that was popular then. If you were a doctor, that was the thing to be. But I worked in ER for a couple of years and decided I didn't want to be a doctor because ER will kind of break you. It either makes you or break you when you deal with those situations every day. And so what happened, I knew I wanted to be in the sciences. And at the University of Georgia at the time, we had those little cards that you fill out. I forget what they're called. But you fill them out with a little number 2 pencil, right? And so you go in to register for classes, and you go look at the sheet, and you fill out your little card with your number 2 pencil, and then you go run it through the computer, and it prints out your class schedule. Well, being the genius I am, I filled out the form wrong, and I ended up in the wrong class. I ended up wanted to take a statistics class, and ended up taking statistics with Fortran programming. So I thought, and you got to remember, this is 1980. People aren't programming in 1980. This is ridiculous. So I thought, no, I don't really want to do that. But I went and I took the course anyway. And I loved it. I mean, I absolutely fell in love with programming. It was just like one of those divine things where God just put me in the right place at the right time and shook my hand in just the right way to fill out the wrong dot. He leveraged my ignorance at that point. So God consistently shows up at the best and worst times to uncover, remind, and rehearse what he sees in all of us. And this was from a past teaching we had. Everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life believing that it's stupid. And so here I was pre-med, and I wasn't doing great, and I was failing out of school. Well, it turned out I was just in the wrong field. I was just doing the wrong thing, and I was doing what felt cool, So after this, and I'm sorry you guys are having to go through my life with me, but it all builds the story, right? Because everything we do is kind of a result of things we've learned in the past or how we've been influenced in the past. So then I found this young lady. I was going to go to Atlanta and work after school. This was after University of Georgia. I was going to go to work in Atlanta, and I came up here to help my parents finish building a house, and went to a church up here. And I met Susan. And she and I kind of hit it off. She actually asked me out the first time we went out. That's another story. But she had prayed for the Lord to bring the right guy into her life. And, she had prayed very specifically, like the week before we met. And, it was crazy when she told me these things that she wanted. And when I was at the University of Georgia, I had actually recorded a Christian song in between being a cowboy and working the ER and playing guitar. And so I can see it. In that day and time, now everybody has a studio in their basement. And everybody's on YouTube. But in 1980s, if you recorded a song in a studio, you were like crazy, right? And so Susan, we go out to dinner, and I play this song for her, and it wooed her. It helped set the trap. That was the bait. That was the bait that set the trap. And so then a couple of years later, we got married. And I had nothing, and she had nothing, and the two of us got married. The two became one, and the one had nothing. So we were just broke as broke could be. So let me tell you then what we do. So I get this job. It's a low-paying job in computer programming. It's local here, small company. And but I'm wearing a tie then, because if you were in programming then you wore a tie. And so, here I am, supposedly be cool. I got this job. So people will lend me money now. And so I can borrow, and I can buy nice, shiny things, and I can convert my signature into something I want. Just one little signature, and I can be driving a shiny new car. And that's all it takes. So I was able to go from being born beautiful to lost and frustrated to being in the right career to having a wonderful person to share with. But this is where I transitioned from that to financial distress. And where financial distress occurs when an individual or organization is unable to pay their financial obligations due to insufficient income. Yeah. So if you're broke and you're married and you're broke and you bought a new car, or what do? You end up being in bankruptcy and you buy a new car. Sorry, that's when I bought the new car. So when I left school, I didn't close out my student loans properly, and my student loans went into default. And then they wanted to garnish my wages, and I didn't want my company to know that I worked for. And so in order to make all of that go away, I did a bankruptcy in order to get payment plans. And so this is part of this cascading effect that happens then when you kind of get in these distress situations. And remember, this is not like medical bills, right? This is distress of my own making. I chose very poorly to get in this situation. So Susan and I finished out the upstairs of my parents' house. And Susan and I lived upstairs in my parents' house for 2 years because we were broke and we couldn't afford to live anywhere. And there's a lot of that now, too, because of housing costs so much. There's a lot more people living at home. But if you're paying off your bankruptcy and you're paying off a car and you have a low-paying job, the best thing to do is get a credit card. So now I have a credit card that I can convert into something fun. I had something shiny before, but now I got something fun. Don't be lulled into thinking you've arrived at financial stability just because people are willing to give you credit. That's like, the credit score thing is a trickery, because you get a high credit score, then you want to borrow money, and then you borrow money, and then that leads to financial distress. So Susan and I, at that point, made the wise decision. We bought another new vehicle. So, it just gets better and better because we deserve more, right? And, we deserve these things. And so because we deserve more, we decide we're going to go on a Delta Dream vacation to St. Thomas, the Virgin Islands. And if you look here, Susan is sporting her beautiful pink island attire, and I've chosen wisely from the Richard Simmons collection. I am sporting it well. So don't convince yourself you deserve an expensive vacation or a Starbucks or anything else, when what you deserve is the peace that comes from following a godly path for your finances. So we used our newly acquired credit card. We took this Delta Dream vacation to St. Thomas, and it included airfare and hotel, but no food or ground transportation. And so I had a little bit of credit left on the credit card, and we got there, and it turned out it was very expensive to do anything. So our hotel was out of town, and we had to pay for a taxi anytime we went anywhere. And we ran out of money like day 2 of this 5-day vacation. I'm talking about broke, flat, busted. So we went to the convenience store and we got crackers and cheese. And we put the cheese on the air conditioner in the hotel room. And we lived on that, and we awaited the day we could get on the plane home so we could eat a meal on the plane. That was our goal. And so it was a wonderful trip. You know, it was beautiful beach and all that. But we were just so broke, and and nothing but broke everything around us. And so we went home. And when we got home, we had a full credit card. We had 2 car payments. We had bankruptcy. And at this point, I think that was a major turning point in our lives. I think we just said, you know what, this has got to stop. This is painful. We're not having fun anymore. The shiny things aren't making up the difference anymore. And so we decided it was time to start getting our act together. And you think, well, you should just give up. If you're that stupid, really you should just quit and go home. So here's where life changed for us. This is a word I made up. I know our military people will probably get this. It's tactical, and it's a combination of strategic and tactical. And where strategy is where you have a goal, and there's something you're striving for that you need to get to. Tactical are things you do right now to get yourself to that goal. So it's the small steps you take to go towards your strategy. And that's what really makes finances work. I can tell you after years of doing it, it's the tiny little things that get you towards your goal. You're not going to, maybe you'll win the lottery. If you do, please remember me. But if you could win the lottery and win that $1 billion, but it's pretty unlikely. So probably not the best strategy. Don't set that as your strategy. So when we did this, we started thinking differently about how we manage money. So on our next year, after the dreaded dream vacation, I may still have my Richard Simmons attire there, I'm not sure. But we did a trip out west, and so you remember the new truck I bought. So we had the new truck and got a camper shell on it, and we did a 17-day trip out west. I had saved $800 for us to go on vacation, and we slept in the back of this pickup truck and unloaded it every night. It was full, and we would unload it every night, and we would sleep in this truck. And we had the greatest vacation we've ever had. It was so much fun. And Susan was young and didn't know any better, and she would cook like a 4-course meal over a campfire every night, and so we're eating great and having a great time. But we had a blast, and because it didn't take a ton of money for us to have fun, and we were enjoying the trip because we weren't in financial distress. Then we learned more about managing our finances, and this is our dear Pastor Hank, he and I were buddies for years and years and years, and he mentored me through a lot of stuff, and he did a financial teaching, and I think that's when Susan and I really started getting a grip on things, when he did this financial teaching, and we started learning about being intentional with our finances. And one thing I heard, I started reading more about finances and financial management, and one thing I read that just really kind of made me think more was we spend 40 hours a week earning money, but we spend very little time thinking about how we're going to spend it, right? We spend all that time working, and then we go home and we sit on the couch and watch TV. But if we spend just a little bit of time kind of planning and figuring out what we're going to do with our finances, it can make all the difference. It's those little things that can make a difference. Which brings us to small things can make a huge difference. That young lady in that picture right there, that's Susan's Sweet 16. the picture. She was a beauty, I'm telling you. So Susan, she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And of course, we're still coming out of all this debt. We're slowly emerging from under the water and starting to see, the bubbles going toward the surface. And Susan, though, she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but that meant we weren't going to have another income. So she's driving home one day, and this thing comes to her mind that a penny saved is a penny earned. And she started dwelling on that and what that meant. And it came from one of pastor's teachings, and it's a quote that comes from Ben Franklin, and it means, if I save a penny, then I've earned a penny, just like a real job. So she made her job saving pennies for us, which essentially created a second income because we weren't spending. So she's the thrift queen. She can find things. Pastor Rhonda knows she can take duct tape and build a wedding venue. I mean, this girl is crazy what she can do with stuff. And so we continue to look for ways to cut costs, and she did that. And we're finally coming out. And so after a while of we're doing all these little small things, working our strategy, we got to the point we could buy a house, which essentially be patient and position yourself for your future goals, even if it means sacrificing more than you want for an extended time. It's painful, but it's worth it. You get to the end of that journey, and you're not in financial distress, and it's just so much better. And the future will show you the fruit that comes from patience. I was slowly increasing my income. We finally moved out of my parents' house. We had saved enough for 20% down, and which meant we didn't have to pay the mortgage insurance. And so that got us in a better position to where we could pay off our house faster and things like that. So I've been working at my job 10 years, and we had gotten ourselves in a better financial position so that I had this opportunity to start consulting. But in order to start consulting, I was going to have a gap in income, because when you do contracts, you work the contract and then you get paid like the end of the month or something. So I'm having to think about, no longer am I going to get a paycheck every week. I'm thinking about, I could go 2 months without a paycheck. What made that possible was having enough buffer there that I had 2 months I could live without salary. If I had not had that buffer, I would have never been able to do that. So once again, the little things helped us build that buffer that got us to the point where I was able to start my own business and start consulting. And then when I did that, I got into IT contracting, and which was very lucrative. In the end of the 90s, you remember Y2K and all of that stuff that went on? Yeah, I was a popular guy in the late 90s. So I worked a lot of stuff. I mean, just give you guys some context. I was on the project that rolled out text messaging. So this little thing called text messaging, I was there the day it started with AT&T. Yeah, you're welcome. But what's funny is I told them, I said, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. and I also didn't think the mouse would go over. That's another story. But I worked at Delta Airlines, and so the gate displays you see in the airports, I had the software that put those things in the gate displays. And so it just was so great, this opportunity that God put me into, that I was just able to do this great stuff that I now look back on and think, man, I was so well positioned and just such a great opportunity. And it was just God's faithfulness through honoring the hard work and the responsibility we had learned to take on through our lives. So this is one of the things that I came to the conclusion. Through my failures when I was in school, to my failures financially, as I was going through, I forgot one. Never hurts to ask. So when Susan and I went to buy our second house, we wanted to spend $130,000 on a house, which seems like a joke now. But we couldn't find one that we really liked. And this house, as you can see, was listed for $164,000. and we just couldn't afford it. We had set our limit on what we were going to pay, and we were not going to go over that. We could have afforded it, but we were financially responsible, and we didn't want a higher payment. So my mother had always said, you know what? It never hurts to ask something. So we told our real estate agent, we said, we're going to make a low offer, a really low offer. And she said, well, this is embarrassing. I'm not going to take this to the people. And I said, well, that's what we're going to offer. And she took this offer to them, and they accepted it the same day. And so we were able to get this house that we couldn't afford. And it was just God's favor, was all over us, because we had just set this boundary that we were not going to go past, and God honored that and put something within our grasp for us. So this is what I feel that one of the things I've learned as a life lesson. View your past failures as your floor, not your ceiling. So if you look at this as your stack of failures right here, that is not the highest you can ever achieve. Sometimes we look at our failures and we go, I will never be any better than that, right? But if we get up here and we go stand on top of our failures and we learn from them, the sky's the limit for us, right? And we can look at these failures and we go, look, you have elevated me, Mr. Failure. You're there, and I have learned from you, and I'm not going to be down at your level again. And that's what motivated me to get better at finances and to become a better person and to better manage my time and things like that. So don't let your failures, don't beat yourself up with failures. So I'm going to wrap it up with this. If I can get to the page. Allow God's strategic plan for your life to become your reality by releasing your potential. The fact that you were born is evidence that God knew the earth needed the potential that is inside of you. Refuse to leave this earth without giving birth to those things. Leave the picture of your potential on the wall of history in the Museum of Earth. This is something that came from teaching we did at Harvest a number of years ago. Don't let finances discourage you. You mean much more to God than what you have in your bank account. Believe that or not. God's not looking at your bank account and going, you're not a good one. It took us many years to get out from under the original debt load that we had. And for us, there was no silver bullet. It was years upon years of the tiny little grains that progressively turned, or tiny little gains that turned into bigger gains, that turned into bigger gains. The thing to remember is try to do something every day, and day by day, that something can become much more. And show you something practical, like we did a lot of things to try to figure out how to manage our money. And this was the silliest little thing that happened. We started tracking every penny we spent. And for a long time, I tried all these fancy filing systems. Well, I'm going to keep all the bank accounts together, and I'm going to keep, the phone bills all together. But what we do now, for years and years we've done this, and what we do now is we have one of these 12-month folders. And all we do is shove that month's receipts into the appropriate slot of the folder. And it's there for your reference. It's very easy to find because your mind can actually find things better in that order, we learned. And so it just gave us a tool. If anything that you can use as a tool to help you manage your finances, by all means use it. Of course, there's plenty of better ways now. You can make pictures of your receipts if you want to. God wants doctors to fulfill his purposes, which is what I originally started as. But he didn't need to use me as a doctor. God wants to use cowboys, but he didn't need to use me as a cowboy. And God wants to use each of us according to our own unique potential, because every one of us in here was born with it, like the little kid with the teddy bear here. So Susan and I, we have been blessed beyond measure, and we've been able to live a good life. We've been able to support our church. We've been able to bless others, and hopefully we're leaving just a small picture on the wall of history. And I hope you guys have felt like there was something in this for you. we definitely love every moment we spend with people, and we love supporting the church, and tithing is a whole other conversation. But I will say, I didn't mention this. Every step of the way, every dollar we've ever made, we have tithed 10% on it. And I'm not saying that to boast. I'm saying that because we felt that was our responsibility. Even when we were in dire distress and debt, we tithed our way all the way through that. And I believe in that. I believe God honored our faithfulness. God still honors our faithfulness to this day. So I thank you guys for your time. Thanks for tolerating me, putting up with me. And next week, maybe you'll get some relief from somebody else. So.